One.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Milton Board of Appeals, and we're here for the May 24th, 2021 hearing. This first hearing is the 7:30 hearing. Joining me this evening are board members Michael Brown and board member Virginia Donahue. First hearing is on the application
This
of
meeting is
it's the
being
7:30
recorded.
hearing. It's on the application of Mary Frances Sennett. Her application is dated February 2nd, 2021, seeking a special permit from the terms of section 4 of the zoning bylaw dealing with non-conforming uses of buildings and land. This particular application involves a residence which was built in approximately 1847 as a single-family home, and it's considered dimensionally pre-existing non-conforming. The applicants have submitted a plan showing that in addition to the residence, which they want to build, would be built at a distance of 5.52 feet from the left side property line when the bylaw requires 10 feet. Since this addition would increase the nonconformity of the building, the bylaw requires and the law requires the applicant to first request and seek and receive a finding from the Board of Appeals in the terms of a special permit dealing with section 4, nonconforming uses of land, that the proposed change is not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what presently exists. This particular property lies in a residency zoning district. The applicant is represented by attorney Marion McEtrick of Milton, Massachusetts, and Mrs. McEtrick is virtually present for this hearing. The rules for this hearing, we'll first hear from the applicant, then we'll hear from any persons present who may have questions of the applicant. And then we'll hear from people present who wish to speak in support or in opposition to the application for special permit. We're recording this hearing this evening, as well as televising it on the Zoom system, so that we hope this goes smoothly for all considered. Mrs. McEtrick, welcome back to the Board of Appeals, and we're delighted to hear from you with respect to this application.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Before I begin describing the application, I wanted to mention that I have corresponded with you, with your board, to let you know that when I filed the application, Mary Sennett was the owner of the property, but her daughter, Andrea Sennett Burke, had a purchase and sale agreement, and she has now purchased the property as of March. So after I filed the application, they conveyed the property, and the owner now is Andrea Sennett Burke. And so I would say that she is the applicant at this point, but whichever way you want to do it, it could be both of them. In any case, Andrea Sennett Burke lives at 75 Granite Place, Milton, with her family. And she is filing this application to create a small addition along the side of her historic home. The addition will have an additional bedroom and additional bathroom. And this is to accommodate her family, which now includes a 9-month-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. They share a bedroom at present, so this additional space would allow the family to spread out a little bit. Greg Graham is here tonight, along with Andrea Burke, and he's the architect who designed this addition. And he has designed an addition that will not change the front appearance of the house. This is in an area of Milton that has a number of really historic and interesting old houses. Not all of them are that large, but by designing the addition this way, he's preserved the way the property looks from the front. And in addition, they do not have to disturb the historic barn that exists in back of this house. So the addition takes into account some of the limitations of the space. It's along one side. It is closer to a neighbor on that side, as described in the introduction. But there is a driveway, and there's a substantial distance between the lot line, the driveway, and the next house. Finally, Andrea Burke has contacted all of her immediate neighbors, and all of the immediate abutting neighbors on all sides have provided letters of support. I think I sent you 2 more today, and I sent you several last week. So and prior to that as well, she's been in touch with her neighbors. This is the kind of appeal that requires, it's based on the Belalta case. We've had a number of these recently. This is an extension of an already non-conforming setback on one side of this lot. The house at this location is a pre-existing non-conforming structure, and the standard for increasing that non-conformity is a special permit standard, no substantial detriment to the surrounding neighborhood. So it is helpful to know that the neighbors know about the application and that they are not objecting to it. And I don't know if Andrea would like to add anything, but is there anything special that you'd like to say in addition? You have to unmute, I think.
I did. Sorry about that. I think Marion pretty much covered everything. I did talk to all my neighbors. I gave them all a copy of the architectural plans so that they could see what it would look like from all aspects, the elevation plans. I provided, I mean, I know most of my neighbors, but I did provide my contact information to let me know if anyone had any issues. I provided that to my 19 closest neighbors that were on the abutting list. So I really covered the neighborhood. And I did speak directly and individually with all of my direct abutters that surround my house. And they all were kind enough to provide a letter of support for me. And that would obviously also include the neighbors that are going to be impacted the most by this, the neighbors that are on the actual side of the pre-existing non-conforming wall. And they are fully in support. And I think Marion already said this, my home is currently a 2-bedroom home. It's a pretty modest home. It's like 1,490 square feet. And so this is really just so that we can have a 3rd bedroom. I have a daughter and a son, so realistically, they will not be able to share a bedroom forever. And I took a lot of time and effort to draw up plans that would maintain the historic structure of the house and not have any negative impact or detriment to the neighborhood. If anything, I think that it improves the overall appearance of the house and structure. So I hope that the board agrees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marion, do you want to continue with further evidence, or is that your application?
Well, I don't know if you're looking at the hard copies of the plans that I filed, and I'm sorry that I'm not displaying them on the screen, but I do like the package that the architect put together, because in the cover he shows, and it's also on the assessor sheets, which I always provide with these applications. It shows the front view of this house. You know, it's a sort of 1.5 story house, a classic style, you know, early, just right for that period. And there are a number of houses in this neighborhood that look like this. So from my own perspective, I think it's really nice that they managed to find a way to design an addition that doesn't spoil that front view. And at the same time, everybody seems to be adding on to their homes these days. So there are some really nice ways to do it. And this is one of the better designs that I've seen recently. And it's a modest addition. It's just a bedroom and a bathroom. It's not, I don't think, going to cause a problem for the neighbors. It's certainly going to be a great help to the family to have the additional space.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Mrs. McGettrick. Let me see if my colleagues have any questions of you or the new applicant, Andrea Burke. Mr. Brown, do you have any questions of the applicant? Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question to anybody who can answer it, but will the addition be in the same style as the existing house? Just asking because I know it's a beautiful historic house, and just want to make sure that it matches the outward design.
Maybe the architect could answer that.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, that was one of the key points that Andrea made more than once, that she is in love with her house and that she wanted to maintain the integrity of that design. And so we actually used all of the existing details on the home to inform us for the new addition. So I think if you look at the elevations, if you have them in front of you, you can see it almost just feels like the house just stretched out a little bit.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Mr. Brown?
No, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mrs. King, do you have any questions of
I don't. I've looked at the plans and it's very tasteful and in keeping with the neighborhood and the house itself. And is no more unconforming as far as being closer to that neighbor. So I feel that this has been well presented and I have a good idea of what's going on here. So that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jenny. Marion, has that completed your case?
Yes, thank you.
Let me see if there are any people present in virtual land out there who wish to speak in support of this application for a special permit.
Chuck,
Bev, is there any person
no.
with their hands raised? Okay, let's see if there are any people present out there who have any questions of Mrs. McEttrick, the applicant, or Mr. Graham, or otherwise wishes to speak in opposition to this application for a special permit.
Fair enough.
Okay, so there are no such people present, and if there are no further questions from board members, Mrs. McEttrick, why don't we end the evidence portion of this particular hearing and discuss this application here and now. We have two issues before us. The first issue is Mrs. McEttrick's motion to amend the application to substitute Andrea Senate-Burke as the applicant, as she is the present owner of the property, in place of Mary Frances Sennett. And the second is whether the special permit should be granted pursuant to section 4 of the bylaw. So Mr. Brown, do you want to be heard first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to say that I support this application and I would vote to approve.
Okay, and does that include approving the substitution of the Andrea Senate-Burke as applicant?
I'm sorry, yes, yes, it does.
Mrs. King, do you want to be heard?
Sure. I support the motion to amend. Andrea Senate-Burke was mentioned in the application originally and her relation with the owner, the past owner of the building. So I see no problem with that. And I think this is a very modest addition to this home and will not be even visible from the front of the house. The neighbors to the side most affected are in favor of it, and I see no reason to stand in the way of this permit.
Okay, well, my view of this is I think Mrs. McEttrick, as usual, has presented a thorough and comprehensive application that has substantial merit. I think the house is a beautiful house. The addition makes the house livable according to contemporary standards. The architectural design is such that there's no apparent change from the front portion of the house, and the portion that's being extended is very tasteful. In these standards today, a 1,490 square foot house is a mini house, and you can see with a growing family and modern needs that this application is probably absolutely necessary and certainly has no
Are we still here?
John,
There he is.
you're muted, John. You're muted, yeah.
Okay,
There you go.
could everyone hear what I've set up to now?
No.
No. No. I don't know how, Bev, have you muted me? Somebody,
No, your feed went away.
okay, thank you. We'll hire Mr. Graham as a technician for our next series of hearings, but thank you very much. So I was going to say, I thought the application was very well presented. I think it was thorough and comprehensive. I think the house is a beautiful house, but using contemporary living standards, this type of expansion is absolutely necessary. It's the present residence is 1,490 square feet, which is a very small residence in Milton. That the application is sensitive to the neighbors' concerns, and it doesn't really affect the architectural integrity of the dwelling from the frontage. And certainly under all of the circumstances, making a finding, excuse me, that the proposed change is not more detrimental to the neighborhood, than what currently exists, is not a difficult finding at all. In fact, the proposed change is indeed beneficial to the neighborhood by any measure by which one views it. So I certainly intend to vote in favor of this special permit. And I think that the substitution of Mary Frances Sennett, I think is well taken. I think it should be adopted to make sure we have an adequate and complete record and the proper legal applicant pursuing this application so that we don't leave any ends outstanding. So all those in favor of granting the amendment to substitute Andrea Sennett Burke in place instead of Mary Frances Sennett, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's unanimously carried, and all those in favor of granting a Section 4 special permit, finding that this proposed change is not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have two unanimous votes on both outstanding issues. Congratulations on your the amendment, and more particularly in the issuance of the special permit. And,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
We'll do our best to crank out a decision here. Let me just ask you, Mrs. McGettrick, is there special need to have this decision rendered on an accelerated basis?
Mary, are you in a hurry to begin construction, or is this just something that you can wait a while for? I'm always willing to do a draft if you want, but nevertheless, it takes a while to get the written decision done, so.
I'm not, it's okay, actually. It doesn't need to be expedited. I did have one question, however, just while I have everyone to make sure I understand correctly. Is there a time limit on the permit?
Well, it's
Yeah.
a special permit. It's not a variance. What would you say?
I was going to say, I think that the special permit should be exercised at least 1 year before the date of its issuance. And I think that may be able to be extended for a period of months. I'm not sure whether it's 6 months or not. But they really don't have to do a lot in order to make this special permit effective. And I don't think they necessarily have to actually begin construction within that 1 year period. I think that there are some actions, administrative actions that can be taken that trigger the efficacy of the special permit. Does that sound reasonable to you, Marion?
Yes, well, I think that completing the building permit application, which can be a fairly lengthy process after this decision is filed, that can take quite a while. But if you begin that process and get your building permit in that in itself means that you're beginning to use the permit. And that may be enough. I guess my point was that special permit's a little different from a variance in that there isn't necessarily a statutory, I mean, you can impose all kinds of conditions on a special permit. So you can impose a time limit if you want. That 6 month that extension, that administrative extension is really available for variances, but it could be, you could at the discretion of the board allow it. In any case, do you think just finishing, you could within the year of this permit being becoming final, do you think you'd be able to complete your application for your building permit and get underway that way? Andrea?
Yes, yes, I believe I can. I just wasn't sure when we were going to actually be breaking ground on construction, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to make everyone have to repeat the process unnecessarily if it was going to be, I don't know, more than a year from now before they actually started the construction at this point.
Yeah, it's Marion, it's my recollection, but I wouldn't put it to a legal test, is that as long as the application for building permit is sought and then just carried out with some reasonable degree of regularity and dispatch, then that activates or validates or makes the special permit technically effective. And of course, that the steps that you take in order to finally get the special permit are all in the control of Mr. Prondak, our building commissioner, and he understands that there are many reasons why that process can get delayed, and it can be illness or financial reasons or whatever. So I think you're pretty well protected by seeking the building permit. And,
Thank you.
but if you and Marion conclude that somehow there are circumstances that are going to prevent you from doing that, let us know, and we'll do our best to extend the time. As Marion knows, the important thing is you get the extension before the time is run out. That has to be, you've got to apply for it. And but the board is forgiving under these circumstances, and the last thing we want to do is put you through this process again.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Congratulations on your special.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to conclude this hearing and move on to our second hearing in about 30 seconds. Are we all set for our second hearing, Bev?
I just promoted the attorney and the applicants. Here we are.
Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Bennett.
Barrett, Andrew
Oh, I'm sorry.
Barrett,
Yes, Andrew Barrett.
or
Welcome to the
Wendell and
board.
Sherry Richardson.
Great. Yeah, we met Mr. and Mrs. Richards at last week for the purpose of the continuance. So
Hey there.
hello there. Welcome to the Board of Appeals. Let me take care of some formalities and then you can make your presentation, Mr. Barrett. This is the application of, it's a 7:45 hearing at 8:15 this evening. It's the application of Wendell and Sherry Richardson, dated March 2nd, 2021, on file with the board, seeking a special permit from the provisions of the bylaw so as to use a portion of the premises as a temporary in-law apartment for the mother-in-law of the applicant within the existing dwelling at 500 Holland Street in Milton. The record here indicates that the board originally granted a special permit for this use on November 26, 2016, in case number 2515, and that particular special permit expired by operation of law on November 23rd, 2020. We have before us in this hearing, we have the applicant's application, and we have the special permits and the extension of the special permit, which was previously granted. And we have the denial letter of Mr. Well, it's from Birch Amer of the Inspectional Service Department dated February 17th, 2021, reminding the applicants, the Richardsons, that their temporary in-law apartment had expired. So I think we are ready for Mr. Barrett and your presentation. Welcome to the Board of Appeals, sir.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Again, I'm Andrew Barrett, representing Sherry and Wendell Richardson. This is really an application to, and it's good to see you, Ms. Sutton. I'm glad you're doing well. This is really an application to extend a special permit for a temporary in-law dwelling in which amounts to the basement of the Richardson's home that was originally granted on November 26, 2016, as you said, Mr. Leonard. The 4 years have expired, and the letter was received from Mr. Prodnak or Mr. Amir from reminding them that it had expired and that if they wanted to continue it, they needed to apply to this board for a special permit to, in effect, extend it for hopefully another 4 years. There's two stories going on here. The first is that there's been no changes to the dwelling that exists in the basement as it is right now. When this permit was originally approved by this board back in 2016, it was outlined that they had received support from all their abutters and at the time, and that there was no structural changes to their residence on Harland Ave. It was basically just the basement dwelling was created through appliances and et cetera, and a bed, et cetera. So it was approved previously in November of 2016. Nothing has changed. I'll let my clients testify to that fact, but nothing has changed downstairs. It remains exactly as it was in November of 2016. The primary reason for the temporary dwelling is for Mr. Richardson's, Wendell Richardson's mother, Viola, who is an 80-year-old woman. She was living there in the temporary residence, which allows Sherry and Wendell to, in effect, keep an eye on her and make sure she's safe and comfortable and cared for in their home just downstairs. Viola Richardson had gone to visit Wendell's brother in Sirasol Island, just off the coast of Venezuela, where Wendell's brother lives. Back in late 2019, just before COVID hit, she went down to visit him and his family for Christmas. She stayed for a couple of months and COVID hit, and she ended up having to stay down there for the bulk of 2020 because of COVID. Her age, et cetera, and the travel restrictions made it impossible for her to come back. She's now has been very anxious to come back to the Richardson's home to live with them. She's been tied up in Sirasol with Mr. Richardson's brother. She's anxious to come back and continue to live downstairs with the Richardsons. So we were asking that this permit be extended for another 4 years if possible. She's 80 years old, good health for right now, but she needs to be with family members, and only time will tell how long she'll be able to live in the home with the Richardsons. But they would very much like to be able to be with her and have her own special separate space downstairs, yet still being attended to. Again, and I'll let the Richardsons speak to this effect so that you have their testimony, but the apartment downstairs has not changed in any manner whatsoever since this board approved the special permit in November of 2016. And again, the house was never effectively or structurally altered in any event at that time. Abutters all approved it. The neighbors are unaffected by this arrangement, and I'll let the Richardsons say, your mother Viola wants to live down there again. Is that correct, Wendell? And
Yeah, that's accurate. She's anxious to return. Probably should happen like in another month and a half. She's going through the process of being vaccinated. You guys are not hearing an echo because I hear one on my side. But yeah, she's anxious to come back. We haven't changed the structure of the house. Actually, we haven't changed the structure of that area since we bought the house. We haven't. It came as is, and we haven't done anything to change or move the walls or anything like that since we bought the house with that dwelling in place.
And you haven't changed it. You haven't changed it since the board approved it in November of 2016. Is that correct?
Correct. I haven't changed it since then as well.
Okay. So we would ask the board to allow this special permit to be continued for another 4 years so that Wendell's mother would be able to return and live with the Richardsons as she has been previously. I'm happy to have any questions from the board.
I just have one question, Mr. Barrett. I just want to confirm that Viola is presently residing on an island off the coast of Venezuela, is it?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to be sure.
She's with Wendell's brother. Is that correct, Wendell?
That is correct. She's visiting my brother.
Let me see if, thank you for your presentation. Let me see if my fellow board members have any questions. Mrs. King, do you have any questions of?
I had one question. Because this has technically been, the special permit has technically expired, do we need to treat this as not an extension, but a new special permit? Just trying to make sure that they're covered in whatever it is that we approve.
I'm sorry, Mr. Barrett, do you want to be heard on that?
Procedurally, I think it could be considered an extension, but if we want to make sure that there's no loose ends, you could consider it an application for a whole new special permit, incorporating by reference all the evidence that was accumulated in the 2016 application, because as my clients have testified, nothing has changed, and everything that was applicable and relevant back then is relevant to this application, however we want to phrase it. But if we want to make it a new application, that's fine with me, as long as the board considers the 2016 decision in its deliberation.
Okay, I think that's fair. Mr. Brown, do you want to be heard on that issue of whether the special permit, which has expired, can be resurrected by an amendment, or do you think we should issue a new special permit on the evidence of this hearing and taking the evidence in the special permit into consideration?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm good either way. Speaking objectively, I think that issuing a new special permit that incorporates the evidence from the previous hearing is probably the safer bet for the applicant, just in terms of abiding by the time restraints. But
Okay.
I think I would vote to approve anyway.
Yeah, I think the consensus is that Mrs. King and Mr. Brown are being rightfully cautious, and I think it's more it's a better process to issue a new special permit incorporating all of the other evidence so that there's absolutely no question as to whether we're resurrecting an invalid special permit, which I think is questionable, but certainly we have the right, since all the evidence is the same, to issue a brand new special permit. I think it's the cleanest way of doing it. Mr. Brown, do you have any questions of the applicant or the Richardsons or Mr. Barrett?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mrs. King, do you have any further questions of either?
No, I just wanted to make sure that the Richardsons were covered, and I do think that having, rather than calling it an extension, calling it a new issuance of the special permit would be in their best interest. So I'd be more comfortable with that.
Yeah, so would I. Thanks for your comments, Jenny. Let me see, is there any person out there in virtual land who wants to be heard in support of the Richardson's application?
Nope, no, they're not.
Let me ask whether there's anybody present virtually who wishes to be heard on this application, who has questions or wishes to otherwise speak in opposition to this special permit.
No.
Okay.
No.
So if there's no such person present, we'll close the evidence portion of the hearing and consider this application on its merits. Mr. Brown, do you want to be heard first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that this is a worthy endeavor by the board. I would vote to approve the application.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. King?
Well, I'm in full agreement of that. Nothing's changed, and this is an arrangement that's worked out well, and I hope it continues to work well for everybody for the next 4 years and beyond.
Well, I agree with my colleagues. I think this application not only has technical merit, it has merit on the facts of the application. It's unfortunate that the existing special permit wasn't extended. So you could have just submitted a letter requesting that it be extended for another 4 years, but technically that didn't happen. So when we issue this new special permit, just please put the expiration date in your diary and come in and see us with a letter like a month in advance of the expiration. And if there are no complaints with respect to the special permit, we have the right to keep extending it. And so you won't have to come back and go through this this technical process again. So, but I think the application is merit. I think Mr. Barrett has presented a compelling application. So all those in favor of granting a new special permit to the Richardsons, please say aye.
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 Aye. So congratulations on your new special permit. We'll do our best to crank out this decision. What we didn't discuss is on the first decision. Mr. Brown, do you want to write that first decision for Mrs. McEttrick?
Yes, Granite Place, sure.
And Ginny, do you have time for this, or would you prefer me to take this one on?
I can do that.
Okay, great. Then Mrs. King will write this decision. Mr. Barrett, is there anything further that you have?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Great. Well, I have nothing further, and there are no further applications before the board. Let me ask our clerk, Beverly Sutton, is there anything else that you want to address before we adjourn the hearing?
No, other than, can you stay on a minute afterwards?
I can, or you can.
Just need to address something with you.
Okay, do you want to call me on the telephone? It's probably a cleaner way of doing it.
Sure.
You call me on my office phone?
The bat phone, yes.
And I will wait for your call. So with all of that, because I just don't like Zoom systems and their the security issues and all of the.
Sure. Yep. No, yep. No big deal. It was just a little something.
Okay, that's great. So with no further ado, this hearing of the Board of Appeals is adjourned with the thanks of all of the participants this evening.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, guys. Congratulations.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sherry and Wendell will give you a call tomorrow.
Okay, thank